Good day to you all, 'tis I, Waifu Belector, and on this day we will be talking about Crash Team Rumble. Now I know what you might be thinking, this is quite a quick turnaround. That game literally just came out, and yes, that's true. Crash Team Rumble released yesterday in fact, but there isn't that much to it. However, that doesn't mean that it isn't any good, so let's talk about it, and remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Now as of this recording, I've played about 7 hours of Crash Team Rumble, and if I'm being honest, I felt like I'd experienced the entirety of what the game had to offer in about 4. However, feeling like I understand what the game has to offer and feeling like I've had my fill of it are two different things. And luckily in 4 and 7 hours, I still feel like I'd like to dive in for more. So anyway, what is Crash Team Rumble and how does it work? Well, honestly, it's kind of hard to explain with labels and established genres because it's actually pretty creative. So let's just describe how the game works. First off, the game is 4v4 and both teams are placed onto a decently wide arena where the main goal is to gather up Wumpa fruit and deposit them into your team's designated Wumpa bank. But players can also attack each other to knock the fruit out of their enemies, and if you get completely KO'd, then you lose all the fruit you were currently holding. In order to attack opponents, move around, or defend yourself, each character has 3 abilities that they can utilize. On top of that, each character also has a role. Characters like Crash and Tawna are scorers whose primary job it is to quickly and frequently gather and deposit as many Wumpa fruit as possible. Then you have blockers like Dingodile who run around harassing and attacking opponents, as well as just hanging out around their bank to make sure they can't score. And the final character role is called Booster. Around each map there are gems that can be activated to give your team score multipliers, as well as relics that can be gathered up and spent to give your team power-ups. The Booster's primary job is securing these things to give your team the advantage. And the power-ups for each of the maps are different. Plus, despite the fact that characters have roles and excel in certain areas, you aren't locked into playing any specific way based on your role. You can absolutely pick a blocker and do nothing but score Wumpa if you want. But anyway, the game doesn't stop there because there are deployable perks called powers that you can pick at the beginning of a match alongside your character. And these will build up periodically as you play the match and do a variety of different things. You can deploy something called a Gas Noxian Guard who will continually zap an area to keep opponents away. Or you can deploy some kind of evil plant trap that spits goop at enemies from a distance, or you can use a portable big fruit that will allow you to carry more Wumpa than you typically can. All of these mechanics and the creative way the game is fundamentally structured make for a fresh and fun experience. But while the game is fun and rather creative, it is a live service multiplayer game, and it feels like the beginning of a live service multiplayer game. That is to say that it does feel a bit sparse in some areas, namely in both its roster and its UX aesthetics. I'll start with the UX stuff because it's almost certainly, definitely less of a big deal. Now, when I'm talking about the UX/UI or whatever, I'm not talking about the look of when you're actually in a match, but the way everything presents outside of a match. The menus and info screens are all very plain looking, and it gives off an unflattering, cheap vibe that isn't actually indicative of how the game feels to play, doing an unfortunate disservice to the presentation of the game. Even the Battle Pass layout and screens that allot you XP are very unattractive to look at. Even if the Battle Pass actually has some cool unlockables in it, it's dampened a little by a somewhat dull presentation. But okay, now moving on to more pressing matters, there's the roster. The roster only has 8 characters at launch. You start off with 3 of them and you'll have to unlock the rest through playing the game. Don't worry, that sounds worse than it is. It doesn't take very long. I had every character in just a few hours. But yeah, the slightly dismal 8 character roster also doesn't help with appearances. I guess they figured if Apex Legends did it, they could do it, I don't know. But regardless, I still think the roster is a bit small, lending itself even more to the completely avoidable rinky-dink kind kind of feel. Now, as I mentioned, this is a live service, so I'm sure they withheld characters from launch specifically to make a marketable spectacle out of them later. And if they're treating this game anything like Crash Team Racing Nitro fueled, then we're gonna have characters out the fucking wazoo in no time. In fact, Crash Team Rumble has already mapped out its first season that will include 2 new characters, a new arena, a new power, and limited time modes. You know, sounds promising, but only time will tell. That's always the thing with these live service titles. Can they actually sustain a player base? I worry about Crash Team Rumble because it is fun and creative, but it's not quite as pristine feeling as something like Crash Nitro fueled. And it unfortunately feels like the beginning of what will eventually turn into a truly great game if given a chance, rather than being that great wacky online party experience right now. If I had to put a number on it, I'd say a 6.5 out of 10, a number that I have no doubt will grow with time, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's time that they don't have. Either way, if you're interested right now, Crash Team Rumble is appropriately priced at $30 rather than the full $60 or $70, and I'm sure the game costing money rather than going free to play is also part of the plan to buy them some more time with some early earnings coming in. You know, they could use that for content. Anyway, that's all I've got to say. Those are my thoughts on Crash Team Rumble. Feel free to tell me what you think, and please consider subscribing or liking if you enjoyed the video. I really do appreciate it. But even if you don't, thanks for watching. Until next time, I am Waifu Belector. I am just a normal guy. I like hentai, and I'm gonna go play some more Crash Team Rumble. Goodbye.